Do you like fighters or spacecraft design? Grab your copy of the first Spacedock reference book all about these topics on our Patreon through the link in the description and pinned comment below. In the summer of 2013, the world was shaken by the sudden appearance of an enormous creature attacking San Francisco. It cut a path of destruction through the city, where it was finally felled after 6 days by a nuclear strike. This was not an isolated event, however, and more of these so-called kaiju emerged from a dimensional portal in the Pacific Ocean. Each creature caused untold devastation among the cities they attacked, and nuclear weapons were the only effective defense against them. A new way of fighting was required, and the Jaeger program was founded to meet that goal, which developed and built a series of vast humanoid machines to fight the kaiju on their own terms. One of the most important of these constructs was Gipsy Danger, a Mark III Jaeger designed and built by the United States of America as part of their contribution to the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps. It was launched on the 10th of July in 2017 and was stationed at the Anchorage Shatterdome to protect the icy shores of Alaska. It was piloted by Yancey and Raleigh Beckett, their minds linked together via the drift, to share the enormous mental load that controlling such a large and powerful machine placed upon its pilots. Standing 88 meters tall and weighing several thousand tons, Gipsy Danger was a proud monument to the industrial and military might of the United States. Its solid iron hull was painted a deep blue and emblazoned with numerous decals, harkening back to the livery of World War II naval aircraft. Protected within the Jaeger's broad chest was its Arc 9 nuclear reactor, which provided power to the entire vehicle and its weapon systems. This was linked to the large nuclear vortex turbine at the front of the chest, which helped maintain the overall system health of Gipsy Danger and its power plant. It could also directly vent the enormous heat generated by the reactor, creating a huge blast of searing hot flame that could burn through even the largest kaiju at point-blank range, or be used as an impromptu thruster. Superchilled coolant from within the chest could be vented from a series of ports along the side of the torso, and was at such low temperatures it could flash freeze entire body parts of a kaiju. The prodigious cooling power of the vortex was supplemented by a series of O8FS oceanic cooling vents, which took in seawater and channeled it through the circulatory system of the entire machine. Gipsy Danger's huge armoured limbs were moved by artificial muscle strands, with 98 dB hypertorque drives giving them increased locomotion. It also had 10 kT gyro stabilizers, which assisted with balance and allowed for smooth and controlled bipedal motion. For faster and more dramatic movements such as sprints, leaps and high-power punches, the Jaeger had a series of jet thrusters and rocket engines installed in key locations. The head of the vehicle was its detachable con pod, which housed the two pilots and the artificial intelligence system that assisted them and monitored the systems of the machine. Mounted above the pilots were a pair of escape pods, which ejected out of the top of the con pod in the event of catastrophic damage to the Jaeger. As Jaegers were designed to operate in open waters, these pods had rapid self-inflating buoyancy aids and were highly pressure resistant. As Gipsy Danger had a detachable con pod, its body had a set of large protective flaps which covered the vulnerable neck and shoulder areas from attacks from the rear. Every Jaeger required at least 2 pilots to withstand the neural load and mental strain that the vehicle's systems placed upon them. The pilots effectively acted as the 2 hemispheres of the Jaeger's brain, and were themselves mentally linked. This process was known as drifting, which allowed the pilots to share their memories and thoughts with one another, and let them work in sync to control their machine. Drift compatibility between the 2 pilots was a key requirement, as completing the final neural handshake to the Jaeger's system was not possible without it. Drifting had a number of hazards, such as random access brain impulse triggers, where one pilot got stuck reliving a particular memory. This could result in mental overload and even unconscious actions translated to the Jaeger itself. The majority of combat between Jaegers and kaiju was fought hand-to-hand, ideally in open water at least 10 miles away from the shoreline, at a distance known as the Miracle Mile. Once within that cordon, it was extremely hard for a Jaeger to prevent the dogged advance of their opponent, who were all extremely focused on reaching and destroying their target cities. Many Jaegers also had energy or projectile weapons of limited range designed to inflict a devastating coup de grace against their opponent to stop them for good. Gipsy Danger was no exception and was equipped with a pair of I-19 plasma casters built into its lower arms. Each of its hands could unfold to reveal these extremely powerful particle dispersal cannons, which fired plasma bolts via a charged carrier rail after a brief warm-up period. These bolts were more than capable of obliterating kaiju flesh and dealing mortal wounds to the great creatures, and the high temperatures generated by the plasma was capable of cauterizing the wounds it caused, preventing the spread of the kaiju's highly toxic blue blood. However, each weapon only had a limited number of shots that could be discharged before running dry. Despite being stationed at the Anchorage Shatterdome in Alaska, Gipsy Danger's first kill occurred in Los Angeles in 2017, where it defeated the Category 3 kaiju codenamed Yamarashi. It went on to defeat a further 3 kaiju over the next few years, but it met its greatest challenger in 2020 in Knifehead, the largest Category 3 to emerge from the breach up to that date. Gipsy Danger intercepted the beast far offshore in order to protect a small fishing boat, and was apparently successful in defeating the creature. However, while the Beckett brothers were celebrating their apparent victory, Knifehead re-emerged from the icy seas and brutally assaulted them. During the struggle that followed, and while Raleigh was preparing his plasma cannon, the huge kaiju speared into the vulnerable left shoulder with its sharpened skull, completely severing the Jaeger's arm. It followed this up by breaching the con pod and tearing Yancey from it while he was still in the drift with his brother, leaving Raleigh alone. He heroically managed to finish off Knifehead and struggled back to the Alaskan shoreline, piloting the machine solo, a feat that had only been accomplished once before. The salvaged remains of Gipsy Danger were transported to Oblivion Bay, a graveyard for damaged and defunct Jaegers considered beyond repair. It lay here for 3 years until the commencement of the Mark III restoration program, where it was returned to the Anchorage Shatterdome. While there, it was given a full rebuild and systems overhaul under the supervision of Marco Mori and Tendo Choi. This lengthy effort included a number of upgrades to key systems, integrating lessons learned from the battle with Knifehead. The first of these was a simplified firing sequence for the plasma casters. This reduced the weapon's warm-up time by 15% and eliminated physical exertion on the pilot during weapon deployment. As well as replacing the lost arm, damaged circuitry was repaired and updated, as was the vehicle's entire hydraulic system and neuromuscular assemblies, and its fluid synapse system. Together, these upgrades improved Gipsy Danger's endurance and reaction times, improving its overall combat capability. This was further augmented with the addition of a pair of GD6 chainswords, with one mounted in each wrist. These retractable weapons were made from a steel obsidian alloy, and could be used both as bladed whips or locked into place to form enormous swords. The Arc-9 reactor was given additional shielding and upgraded into a double-core design, and received new fuel rods and a rebuilt cooling system with improved ventilation for better efficiency and heat rejection. The Jaeger's control systems were also updated, with the ComPod interface brought up to the standards of the later Mark IV and Mark V models such as Striker Eureka. This brought a remodeled heads-up display containing navigational information as well as readouts of the vehicle's weapon systems. After the funding for the Jaeger program was cut in favour of the vast wall of life that ringed the entire Pacific Ocean, Gipsy Danger was moved to the Hong Kong Dome along with the 3 other surviving Jaegers. It was not long before the city was attacked, and Gipsy Danger was sent out to take on Leatherback and Otachi, a pair of Category 4 kaiju who had destroyed 2 Jaegers and knocked out the third with an electromagnetic pulse. As Gipsy Danger was running on analog systems, it was immune to this pulse, leaving it as the last line of defense against the rampaging kaiju. After the battle, the remaining 2 Jaegers embarked on one final mission to the breach to attempt to close it with a nuclear bomb. However, the breach was guarded by another pair of Category 4s, with the first and only Category 5 emerging not long after the Jaegers arrived. During the desperate battle that followed, both Jaegers were severely damaged, and the nuclear device had been triggered early to dispatch 2 of the kaiju. Left alone, Gipsy Danger descended into the breach. With its reactor set to overload, the 2 pilots ejected to safety, leaving the noble machine to close the breach by itself, sealing the world off from further kaiju attacks. You can support Spacedock by joining our Patreon, where you can get our Spacefighter design reference book. Alternatively, you can support us directly through YouTube by giving us super thanks or by becoming a channel member. Thanks to our supporters, and thank you for watching.